It was an early noon. Crystal, Princess of the Ice Vulpix, was out for a walk by herself. Despite how many warnings, how many tries her parents had been trying to telling her not to do it. Because this forest was divided by a small river. Both sides, but from other sides was ruled by the Vulpix clan, and one other side belonged to the Pikachu clan. Both clans were enemies. They didn't trust each other for any reason. But there was one reason that Crystal was leaving her small home every single day is because to see her best friend Sparky. Sparky was actually a Pikachu. The fact he was actually the crown prince of the Pikachu clan, and despite how much this happened, for a reason why they became friends is because only some years ago, when they were still both young, Crystal ended up in the river by accident after she climbed up in a tree to reach some of the fruits that she wanted. And she couldn't swim. And Sparky, he saw that from his end, and he couldn't stand just, even though being told from his family to stay away from the ice Vulpix. So he took the risk, jumped down in the river, dived down, and rescued her, and dragged her to her side of the river, and she told her thanks. Before anything else, he jumped back down and swam all back to his side, and he smiled and waved to her and ran off into his part of the woods. Ever since then, Crystal had went back to the river to hopefully to sometimes to being able to see him. And there were actually sometimes they did manage to sneak to each other's on the part of the river so they could speak and just talk. But even not knowing that this was really crazy idea, because despite how many times Crystal had tried to convince the parents that the Pikachus are not terrible enemies, that should stop this constant feud, that they should be friends, but the parents didn't listen. In fact, they tried to convince her that the Pikachus has always been their enemies. Even when she asked them, Dad, what was the reason for us to even being enemies in the first place? What made the hostilities even started? She asked. This has been over a century or more. There has been like over 100 years. And even the fact, even in most of this, her parents doesn't even realize themselves what the actually reason. They don't even remember, but only been told from their families and others of their clan and other ice Vulpix that the Pikachus are untrustworthy. They're always hostile to any Pokemon they came across their path. They only seems worthy to trust if there's anything else. But that was another reason why Crystal could never mention of her being meeting Sparky. Especially if they believed that if she told them that Sparky saved her from drowning once, they would even believe her. And in fact, the same thing as for Sparky if he told his family. But over time, Sparky actually has started to have some feelings for Crystal. But he knows it's practically impossible for them to even be together. But even Sparky said, if we cannot even be friends or even anything, we should probably just run away. Just go to some other islands. Crystal thought maybe that was something that they could do, but at the same time, she could just abandon their own home, her family. Even if it meant that they would disown her as removing her title as a princess, even would that be worth it? He thought himself. He told her that he doesn't really care if he is no longer being the crown prince because his younger brother could easily be taken over. But one day, Crystal was waiting by the river in the secret spot for waiting for Sparky. And in fact, he did show up. They were actually very, they were actually happy to see each other, except Crystal looked a little bit sad. And when he saw that, Sparky was like, Crystal, what's the matter? She started crying and said that, I'm sorry, Sparky, but I won't be able to see you as much as I wanted to anymore. What? Why? Did your parents find out? She shook her head and said, No. My parents have sworn to me to marrying this Vulpix. I don't even like him. He's obnoxious. He's just crazy. Well, he's just he doesn't care about you. Precisely. If you mean you should do something what you wanted to do. You should be with the one that you want to be with. Yeah, but that is impossible, she said. What is that? He asked. At first she didn't know how to explain this. But then she stood up and said, the reason why I can't be the one that I love is because it's you, Sparky. I love you. Then she just ran off. Sparky sat there in the bushes in their secret spot, stunned. He had a crush on her. He had no idea that she had a crush on him. But for the next several days, he went to the secret spot hoping that she will appear. But she didn't. Sparky was getting a bit worried. He knows that the risk of crossing over to the other side, hoping to find Crystal. He knows that he would only be captured and put in some sort of dungeon or just thrown over to the other side of anything. Either he would just been put in some sort of cell, then thrown over the river to his side and telling not come back here ever again. And even though he didn't know exactly what happened, but one day when he was sitting there, this Pidgey came over and said that he had a message for Sparky from Crystal. He was excited, but the excitement went immediately. Turned out this was the last message that he will ever hear from Crystal. Turned out Crystal was getting married the same day, despite that he doesn't even like or love this other Vulpix. Sparky felt he had to do something to stop this. And he did something that was pretty much very much crazy. Because he went back to his clan and he then had this plan. Even though it was not a well thought plan, while his parents were sitting on their thrones talking to some of each other, he told them that he is in love with someone. And before they could even ask, he said, I don't care if you won't accept her as my bride or something. You can't allow it. And I will still be with her no matter what. They looked a little bit confused and asked which type of Pokemon that he is in love with. Or if it's another one of those Pikachus. He shook his head and said, no, her name is Crystal. Crystal, they said. Son, there is no Pikachu or any other Pokemon here is named Crystal. Actually, sweetie, there is one, his mom said. But she is a Vulpix. An ice Vulpix? His dad loudly screamed out. My only older son cannot be with a Vulpix. Before he could say anything to tell the guards to stop him, Sparky ran out and he ran to this river. Even after having some of the guards wait after him, he jumped in the water, swam all the way over, and ran out of the side of the Vulpix. The guards didn't even cross because they had been ordered to not cross the river at any point, despite they had been ordered to capture the Crown Prince. Sparky was good in stealth movement. He managed to sneak into the Volpic's home. He managed to sneak into this, suppose, the Volpic clan's house or small cabin or something like that, and he found Crystal. She was getting ready to get married, and he told her that he had told his parents about them, how much he felt for her. And he once again told her that she had probably just run away. And for once, she agreed. They managed to sneak out of a secret passage that only Crystal knew about. They left only on a short message behind that she is not gonna marry this Vulpix. In fact, she is running off with her true love, the Crown Prince of the Pikachu clan. And when her parents found this, they were furious. But it was too late. Because they had left this forest and even had left this mall. They had even left the island of Akala Island together. They actually had, and they all went to the Pony Island for they had been living together. They actually both felt happy, despite feeling a little disappointed that their families could not approve their relationship. But even after only a couple of weeks after they had arrived to the Pony Island, they actually got married in a small ceremony of their own. And it had been a year after since. By the time Crystal and Sparky had actually made their own home, but not a kingdom. They didn't care if there was now a king or a queen of their own kingdom. They didn't even care of the royal titles. They were actually still there, and by the time they actually had two daughters, two Vulpix daughters. But one day, Sparky was home with the daughters when Crystal came home running. She heard that her father was ill. He had been sick for a little bit of few sometimes. It turned out one of her friends from Alcala Island, a Pidgey, actually he flew all over the way to the Pony Island and delivered this message. And based on what he described to her, she was destroyed. She was devastated. Despite how she felt about her parents not approving her relationship with Sparky, she didn't even care. But her parents' love for her love for her parents was still strong. After she told Sparky what exactly her father was like, and they decided to go back to Akala Island, despite knowing the risk that he could be captured. They arrived back to the Vulpix clan's home. The guards surrounded them and took them to the castle. And her mother was happy to see her, but when she saw two small Vulpix, she asked if that is their children. Both said yes. But then he asked what about her father's condition. Her mother explained what happened. It turned out he has been poisoned by some type of plant, and the others had no idea what to help. And Sparky, he asked the queen, even though despite being told by being silent, he only asked what type of plant it looked like. She explained how it looked like, and then he said, "Don't worry, I know that plant. It is deadly poisonous, yes, but it's a cure," he said. Both Crystal and Crystal's mom looked at him and said, "There is?" "Yes, but there's a catch. The cure grows on my side of where my clan lives. I can go get it. She was actually, Crystal's mom was hesitating to do this, but there was nothing else that he could gain a win from this, so she allowed it. Crystal decided to stay with her family to keep her father company. And Sparky didn't hesitate and didn't waste a minute. He ran all the way to the river, jumped down, jumped in it, swam over, and managed to find some berries that was the cure. He grabbed a leaf, put them there, and tried to keep them safe. He managed to get back to the Volpix castle, where he gave them to their doctor, and he made the cure a potion. The king actually felt foolish to have banished his own daughter, but also not approved this at all. But after he found out how Sparky knew the cure and that he did everything to save the king, he decided the hostilities between the Vulpix and the Pikachu clans should be over. So only about a few days later, he actually had invited over Sparky's parents and his younger brother. They were actually hesitating to even accept this. They were expecting to be captured. But when they saw Sparky, well, they were still a bit unhappy, except his younger brother was really happy to see his big brother again. But after he found out that Sparky and Crystal has two daughters, and the fact that he did everything he did, that he found a cure to save the Vulpix king. And Sparky said, I could not allow this to happen. I couldn't see my own wife's father dying, because even though he was ignorant that he didn't allow us to accept us, I didn't have the hate in my heart to do this. Even if it meant the risk I could be captured and put in a dungeon for the rest of my life, I would have still done it. And for this act, his parents was actually proud, because they had raised them to be honest, brave, loyal, and for most of all, they taught him how to protect others, no matter if they were not part of his clan, but regardless, if there was even the Vulpix clan's king, or the queen, or any other Vulpix. The king of the Pikachu actually approved Sparky as his son-in-law, and both clans made peace. They were actually happiness about both clans. The fact, shortly afterwards this peace happened, a bridge was built over the river so that any of the Vulpix and the Pikachus could actually walk over to both kingdoms. After that, the both royal families actually had approved the marriage between Sparky and Crystal. They actually had made both clans' kingdom as one. And only about a year after this, Crystal and Sparky have at least two more children, twins. A Pikachu boy and a Vulpix daughter. Sparky could not have been happier to have risked all this to unite both kingdoms as one. And even the risk of being captured and put in a dungeon for the rest of his life. But he couldn't see his own father dying from being poisoned. And in fact, he couldn't just stand there, just watch how his wife been so devastated, knowing that her father still loves her, but he couldn't allow this to continue. Because if he had even helped her father, there's no way to be saying for sure how Crystal would react otherwise. She was just gratitude that Sparky knew the cure. The reason why he knew this much, because he had been trained and taught about to know exactly which plants are poisonous and good. And for both Crystal and Sparky, they were just happy to being able to have found their true love and have a big family together. The end.